This is Arlen Williams of Gulag Bound and Stuff, and I'm sitting at the Red Pill Expo with George Webb, who, if you don't know, I'll have to tell you who that is, and we'll start doing that right now. George,
Hey, Alan, how you doing?
I am doing fine. You are creating a lot of trouble, though. You're being a bad boy. And what's the latest in that before we get into some of the depths? How are things with the feds and the New York Times?
Well, I think what you're referring to is the fact that I'm doing an investigation on Pakistani nationals that are in Congress, that are four Wan brothers that are on Capitol Hill and two wives that are associated with Pakistani intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And there are several programs that they're involved in. One is secreting satellite secrets out of the United States to the Middle Eastern countries. And there is another one for bringing in, the other way, uranium, depleted uranium and spent fuel. So I believe what you're referring to about me being in the New York Times and CNN was we had exposed the fact that the diplomatic containers that these brothers have are being used to bring in these depleted uranium weapons, the armaments, the shells, and so forth, and then also the spent uranium to South Carolina, to Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of the people watching our live broadcast at that time felt compelled because we were talking about how simple it would be when you're bringing this material in, that you could add a cigarette-sized pack of C4 and create a dirty bomb.
Sure.
That easily. And if the people of South Carolina and all of our ports have a right to know that,
mm-hmm.
and especially since they're being managed by a company called Gulftainer,
mm-hmm.
which is the two key people are the chief Iranian nuclear scientist and the chief Iraqi nuclear scientist. So you put all these things together, and that's why somebody called the port of Charleston and said, hey, there may be a dirty bomb, let's do a sweep. Then the port called me 3 different times. I never called the port. And I basically explained to them, just sweep the diplomatic containers. There was only 4. They
mm-hmm.
said they scanned them and then cleared them.
But they didn't say.
Wouldn't give any more information.
Funny how that works.
Yeah. But we are FOIAing those records. The one thing I found out was that if I'm a diplomat, I can not only have a diplomatic pouch that customs people can't go in with. This is the Vienna Convention of Diplomatic Relations. But even if I scan the container, I can send a whole container up to 200 tons. And if even scanning it with an X-ray is considered breaking the seal of a diplomatic container. So this is what I call the diplomatic container loophole.
Exactly.
That these things are coming in on. And that's why it's been very difficult to get this information.
And it relates to the drug trade. It relates to whatever they think they can make a buck with.
Whatever you can put in the container, basically,
mm-hmm.
cannot be looked at through. And we've, if Trump came out today and said in a tweet, "What if the Iran brothers were Russian?"
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing would explode. This whole Iran brothers thing that nobody's heard of would explode. People would say, "Who are they? You know, what are they?" And the whole thing would unfold. So if you haven't done it, Google that. Google who are the Warren brothers.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll look at that way. And your website or YouTube site, want to make sure that everybody knows that?
Yeah, if you go to George Webb and you say one, I'm sure you'll be amazed at how many videos there are out there. And we also do, with Crowdsource of Truth, with a partner of mine, Jason Goodman and Trish Negron, we do more of a conversational style. So you can, if you want to kind of catch up and don't want to watch all the videos, you can go to more of a conversation.
Exactly. And you try to not to waste people's time like I try not to. So let's get right back to, I think a lot of people have seen some of your videos, some slog through the whole thing every day. God bless us all for trying to keep up with you. But people want to know, what the heck? Where did this guy learn his stuff? How did he get into this? What's he doing? So how did you, first of all, you sound like a Navy guy. Are you a Navy guy?
No, not a Navy guy. My brother was in the Air Force, and he had some experience in covert things in Central America. I went through college with a Navy guy, though,
okay.
And was studying at Miami University in the intelligence program.
Okay.
And everything I learned about the intelligence program is actually through my roommate in college.
All right. Well, I had lunch with you part of the time yesterday. We started talking, and you have a unique Sherlockian way of gleaning information from everything you seem to come across and putting it together and fitting that into various modalities and schemes that you work on and try to bring things to light about after you connect the dots. How did you and when did you start doing that?
Well, I think in all covert systems, I mean, the reason why they're covert is because people don't want anybody to know about them. So they go to great lengths to try to hide these things. So, for instance, if you want to go back to Iran-Contra, the guns actually that were flying south from Mena Airport in Arkansas were being made in a factory called Parkometer. So the cover, the front office was, a parking meter business. So these covers do exist. Is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
So drugs come one way, guns go the other way. So if you look at that model and then you use that model again and again and again, it helps.
Okay. When exactly did you start picking that stuff up, and how did that happen?
Really only until I got it kind of in a tangle with the FBI in about 2010 over protesting over something called JTTF, which is the Joint Terrorism Task Force, which sounds really great. It sounds like, hey, they're going to, work with my local police and we're gonna beat terrorism. But what it turned into was more of a kind of a surveillance force, and also kind of a force that intimidates local police and local and state police by introducing what I call prowler teams, and the Secret Service calls them prowler teams. I don't know, but this is a separate force, nighttime kind of covert action force that the normal police officers don't even see during the day. And it's the same thing the CIA has done for 75 years. You create a kind of a covert disruption force for your political enemies. And when I say that, people are saying, "Are you kidding?" No.
There have been documented cases. The Oath Keepers people can tell all sorts of stories about agents from one part of the Fed establishment or another posing as white supremacist rabble rousers, trying to see who they can taint and what they can make out of it.
I think a lot of the people in that Oregon thing were agents, they're posing as Oath Keepers, and it's the perfect cover. You dress up, you look, and if you don't believe the FBI has ever been involved in things like this, you just have to look at history. It's just replete with examples, just one after another.
Plus, there's a chilling effect that happens, and a split-off effect. You get people suspecting each other and kind of dissolving into nothingness after a while.
It's actually
the militia movement.
Diffuse and disrupt.
Okay.
Diffuse and disrupt. So get somebody in there, infiltrate, and then start whispering, "Hey, I think Bob is gonna try to set you up over here," and then you whisper to Ted, "Hey, Ted, Bob, watch out for Bob."
So that in and of itself, that's not law enforcement. It's not even surveillance. It's active measures of political nature.
Yeah, it's infiltration and it's disruption. If you look at, people say, "Oh, this is crazy." Look at presidential directive, decision directive. So that's a PDD 62, and it calls specifically. Clinton signed it. Bill Clinton signed it in 1998. Calls for the CIA to work with the FBI on a disruption campaign.
There you go.
And the difference between a presidential decision directive and an executive order is an executive order is overt. A presidential decision directive is covert.
Unless we blame Clinton for that, this co-opting of the presidency by the intelligence deep state has been going on for a long, long, long time, and we had. Of course, Richard Nixon introducing regionalism. We had Ronald Reagan introducing Rex 84 and survival of government and what to do in real or natural or orchestrated crises and things like this.
So to speak about Rex 84, which is short for Readiness Exercise 84, that's going to be an Ollie North George Bush thing, but it comes in under the umbrella of Reagan. So people say, "Oh, Reagan, he's a good salesman. He's a great guy. I like President Reagan." But really, it was George Bush bringing in Readiness Exercise 84. Okay. And it's basically a plan to wall off the cities, create a containment vessel for the smart cities program. Is not the new program, and then cut off all the interstate traffic, and you keep the population from moving and organizing.
Which is conveniently by that time, hopefully, funneled into high-speed rail by that time. Funny how all this comes together.
Yeah.
And the need to preserve the land. It's the same methodology used by King John during the days of the Robin Hood legend.
Okay.
And
I got to read up on that.
yeah, that was the big battle then. That the truth behind it all was that the yeomen were wanting their control of their own land and to farm their own crops instead of being slave laborers, and started encroaching upon the royal hunting grounds.
So that was the cover. The royal hunting grounds just kept going, getting bigger and bigger.
Right. And now we have all these land buy-ups. The royal hunting grounds are increasing all over the Wild West out here.
Yeah, this conference has been very good for that. A lot of issues I didn't know about. The Red Pill Expo is where we're at. And the amount of confiscation of, first of all, I didn't know that the government owned 850 million acres of land in the United States, but the encroachment of that land is really quite dramatic.
That is severe. Well, the whole methodology is to control resources, whether it's blood diamonds or oil or land, water, air, whatever is controllable, food, and hoard it, ration it, profiteer from it, and enslave by it.
Unfortunately, it's the same old, same old. It's just with a cover now. I mean, the stuff that I've reported on in my series is really the robber barons of the 1890s with a cover, with a social justice cover. There's a little bit of extra expense because you have to have pictures of, the 2% of expenditures that you do for helping someone. But then the 98%, this is Haiti, the Clintons, for instance.
Which feeds right into the gentleman who founded this operation with Freedom Force. That's Edward Griffin, and his book, Creature of Jekyll Island, which talked about the beginning of the Federal Reserve by people like Rockefeller and Morgan and those kinds of people, which are basically functionaries of the beast.
Yeah, I haven't actually read that book, and so I need to. But I've heard it's excellent. I do know the background of Chase, though, and J.P. Morgan and House of Morgan and kind of creating a financial cartel.
And it's interesting, the right-left paradigm was going on there. Even Warburg was lamenting that there's just too much socialism involved. And he wanted to set up more of a fascistic, corporatistic order and let people have a little freedom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because that way people can get richer.
Yeah, well, if people are self-motivated, then there's more to tax, right?
Yeah, if you give them a little bit of a cut in what they do for themselves while you take the rest, then they're more motivated.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, I didn't know that was Warburg. I have a lot of studying to do.
Well, let's study more about you, because people want to know what the heck is with this guy. Is he being fed by the FSB, the Russians, and given information? I've actually suspected that from time to time of Wayne Madsen. In my background, because he came up with some wild, interesting things that sure haven't been proved false.
Yeah.
But, okay, let's go back to when. What in the world have you been doing besides this while you were getting a few gray hairs? What have you been doing for a living?
I was a computer salesperson for the longest time. Yeah.
Me too. I almost choked.
And software and web analytics. And so... But it's interesting. I did network troubleshooting for a long time, and I was at McAfee with Alperovich, who's now at CrowdStrike, and is going to make the whole CrowdStrike school play with the DNC and the DCCC. That's all coming in the hearings that are coming in the Trump coup. But I sold software, and network analysis is a little bit like investigation. Mm-hmm. Instead of the entities being routers and switches and hubs and PCs and laptops, they are people. And, servers are like organizations and people are like PCs. And then there's these connections, and you can look at the chatter, that traffic between 2 points, and that tells you a lot. If you have, just by metadata. So the same analysis that Snowden did with the social graphing that, Michael Hayden talked about is the same sort of thing I use in analyzing what I call a rat line, or an illegal network, illegal conspiracy.
This is about 15 minutes, and it may be getting to the end of what I have available on this camera. So let's stop right here, and maybe we can do an installment number 2 and find out a little bit more about what goes on between his ears and what makes him tick.